Now, if you're looking for affordable second passports that can be delivered quickly in 2026, here are two options that you should consider: Sao Tome and Príncipe and Sierra Leone. But there are key differences about both of them that I want to explain to you in this video. I am Jeremy. I am the CEO and founder of Millionaire Migrant, but I'm also the CEO of Saver & Partners, at a 15-year-old citizenship by investment firm that is extremely highly ranked on Google, Trustpilot, Facebook, and we are accredited by multiple governments as well. And I'm going to talk about two very attractive second passport options you should consider in 2026. Before I start, I'm going to mention that we are a government accredited firm by 8 different governments right now, maybe even 9. But we are also accredited for both Sao Tome and Príncipe, but also Sierra Leone. And this is very important because it means that if anything goes wrong, you can contact the the government institution directly and say, I'm not happy with how Saver & Partners or Millionaire Migrant have been handling your application. This is important because a lot of agents are not just in these two countries, but actually in most of these countries. So always DYDD, as I mentioned in a lot of my videos, DYDD, do your due diligence. This is the first mistake that a lot of investors make, is they just don't check enough. And it's not just within second citizenship, but I've noticed in investments, financial products, real estate, a lot of people, they just don't do it until it's too late and you realize the money's gone. So this is something I forewarn you to do upfront. Sao Tome and Príncipe is a Portuguese-speaking island on the Gulf of Guinea off the west coast of Africa. Now, it's a small population, 250,000 people, but it is actually one of Africa's most stable democracies. Now, this is something that you should pay attention to because in my 15 plus years of experience working in this sector and having processed over 11,000 passports, you need to invest in a country that has a stable democracy because you have rule of law, but also you don't want political turmoil. You want to make sure that everybody on the country is largely in favor of having its nationality being able to be purchased by foreign investors. If you don't have that, it could complicate your application process. The cost for Sao Tome for a single applicant is $90,000. This is the government cost. On top of this, you have DD, processing, submission fees. So all of this, you should reach out to one of our team and we'll explain the whole process. We'll have a calculator for you and break it down, including everything, including the cost of the actual physical passport itself. But it starts at $90,000, and then for a family of 2 to 4, it's $95,000 plus $5,000 per extra dependent thereafter. You have an initial submission fee, which is $5,000, and adding dependents, that means that after you've got the nationality, is between $5,000 and $10,000, depending if it's a child or a parent or a spouse. And newborns are just $500. This is something that I've noticed a lot of clients who obtain nationality in Grenada, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, Antigua, and Dominica have been upset when they would pass a legislation that means that the price of adding a newborn would sometimes reach like almost $5,000. Actually, I can't remember which country it is, but I think it was Dominica. And they came out with something, and a lot of people were like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. And they have started looking at bringing the cost down. So at least now you know it's just $500 for a newborn, which I think is in line with any other country in the world. Sao Tome accepts all nationalities except for North Korea. So what I mean by this is that it's very interesting because Russians, Iranians, a lot of these two nationalities mainly have had a lot of challenges getting locked out of all of the other countries' citizenship by investment programs. So that's something that would attract that nationality. The time to get the citizenship is around 2 to 3 months, which is very fast. The benefits you would have in terms of visa-free or visa on arrival or e-visas is that you've got access to 71 destinations, including of the most important ones, South Africa, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Malaysia. Consulates around the world, obviously in Portugal, because it's a former Portuguese territory. You've got Belgium, China, Nigeria, which is because of proximity, and Angola as well. And also in the UK and US, like every other country has as well. There is a potential fast track to Portuguese citizenship. However, I would really question this. I think some people sell that, and you have to be very mindful is that sales isn't everything. It sells on LinkedIn, it sells on, photocopy machines. It doesn't matter. Like there will always be someone who will tell you it's a shortcut to Portuguese citizenship. It isn't. You will be a CPLP national, which means that you will have access to kind of like the common territory of Portuguese former territories. However, it's not a part of citizenship. A lot of people have said that, but there is nothing really tangible in writing that confirms this. Now, I know what you're thinking, an African citizenship by investment program. Okay, it's Africa, and it's true there are a lot of issues around stability in Africa. So how do I know this program will be around? How do I know the value of my passport? But I would say the price has pretty much got that priced in, right? There is that Africa risk premium that is priced in. So you're paying essentially knowing that if you don't want to do it, by the way, you can pay for the Caribbean, which is $200,000 plus. You can do Nauru, which is just over $100,000. You could do Vanuatu, although I wouldn't recommend it. I've been very very public about this. Some people now are saying, oh yeah, you shouldn't do Vanuatu, but I know they were selling it 3 years ago. I've never been a fan of it. And the reason being is that we do a lot more due diligence before we take on a program, because we have a lot of clients and have a lot of reputation that we need to protect. So the most important thing is that we check everything in advance. And I'll tell you something else about Sao Tome and Príncipe. Now, when we went through the vetting process to onboard this program, rather than rushing and getting a license and saying, hey, we're licensed for this program, we did a lot of vetting to see if we actually wanted to be able to have a look at this program. Now, and these are questions you'll find here that most agents probably wouldn't even tell you about. So let me explain. First of all, we visited their physical location, number one. Second of all, we also asked for a copy of the legislation showing that there is actually a citizenship by investment program. Furthermore, we asked who is the person that will sign the citizenship certificate, because it will vary from country to country. But largely speaking, it should be the president or the prime minister of that country. Now, Sao Tome, it is not the president or the prime minister that will sign it. And this is similar to Vanuatu. Now, some of you may have concerns with this, but if you look at the fact that there is actually legislation, that the people who are signing the certificates and the people who are managing the whole program have been publicly approved to have the authority to issue this, these are very comforting factors for us before we could mention it to our clients. And again, as I mentioned, anything can happen in Africa, but the price you get is the price you pay. If you're not comfortable with that risk, there are other programs you can pay more. But I also explain to people, if you want to pay a good price for a good passport, then essentially something will have to give, and that will usually be a delay. But in this case, you don't have a delay, therefore you have a good price. So the risk could be that the passport, being Africa, might not be worth that much value in the future. Or you could look at it from the other side and say, actually, I would like to be an African citizen because I don't want to be involved in everything that comes with, let's say, the Caribbean that's under pressure from the EU and the US, or I don't want to have a residency in Europe because I just don't know what the Europe is going to look like. I'm very concerned. So and then there is an argument actually to go forward with an African citizenship. So in summary, the official Gazette of Sao Tome and Príncipe formally established this program. The Certificate of Authorization and Credibility, duly signed by the Prime Minister of Sao Tome and Príncipe, has granted the authority to the CIO office to be able to act as a recognized representative of this program. And we visited them, we checked them out, we looked at the people around them and supporting them and the structures they had in place in terms of compliance, banking, consular services, and we felt that this is something we can give the thumbs up. However, we can't see the future. We never knew what was going to happen to Cyprus or Malta or Montenegro, all of those, Moldova, all those programs that were closed for any other reason, usually because of things that were done out of our control or out of the citizens' control or out of the government's control. But the fact is, again, I feel that this is priced in, and there is even a reason to be moving in that direction anyway, because everything that is regulated in EU and UK and US, we're almost in this kind of dystopian future where it's over-regulated and we're just losing a lot of our sovereignty. Now, my colleague Irena has done a video talking about the Sao Tome and Príncipe program in more depth, but I'm doing this video so that you can understand a little bit more about how you can compare programs, but also to go a little bit more in depth, coming from someone who has multiple licenses. That means so I have to be vetted for compliance, AML, KYC procedures. We pay for all of these licenses. We use internal software. So it's important for you to get a kind of expert's guide in terms of how do I know which program to go for. Maybe I'll do one for the Caribbean in the future, the Pacific, European programs, residency programs I could do in the future. But we're going to start with these two because I've noticed that there's real demand for getting away from kind of all of these programs in Europe or with European relations or visa-free access to Europe. As I mentioned, in summary, there's uncertainty and risk with any new program, whether it's African or non-African. The due diligence standards are yet to be tested. These extremely fresh programs. I think we met with the people from Sierra Leone and they mentioned they've only taken about 15 applications. Sao Tome has probably taken more, maybe 30 or something. But even Nauru, the last time I spoke to them, there were about 20. So these are all new programs. They have new programs. You haven't really had the stress test in terms of the due diligence, compliance, banking, and so on. So this is something that you should be mindful of, and it could, and also legislation can change. Governments will change. Prices will change. This has happened historically. So don't be surprised if this will happen again. What's important is that at the point you go in, you're protected until the time you come out. Then our job is finished. You can always reach out to us. I'm still friends with clients who I processed passports for 13 years ago, 14 years ago. So, but we are only liable for that period. What you do with the passport is your responsibility. If you do anything silly, don't come and blame us. Sierra Leone. Now, Sierra Leone is a member of ECOWAS. What is ECOWAS? ECOWAS is the economic community of West African states. So you've got Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, all those countries in that kind of area. And that is a benefit for you if you do a lot of business there. We have noticed a lot of our clients, sometimes kind of from that part of the world, sometimes diaspora, Indian diaspora, Lebanese diaspora, or just generally businessmen who need to get around there. I met with one of our clients who's a billionaire, and he said he could have taken private jet. I know he has the money, but he's someone who's very conscious of his profile and being amongst his people. So he was taking commercial. And he just explained to me he had to do a round trip around West Africa. And it sounded horrendous. How many visas he had to go, how many transits he had to go through. He's someone who has been in contact with this for the passport. Even late last night, the secretary of a very large gentleman that does business across the world, but he was asking about this because he understands how difficult it is to get visas to get around Africa and specifically West Africa. And so that is something that is a benefit for you if you get Sierra Leone that you won't have with Sao Tome. So ECOWAS benefits are very attractive for anyone traveling a lot within that region, but also you get residency advantages as well. Other benefits of ECOWAS membership is that you've got freedom of movement and work to the 15 member states. So this is a big difference between this and Sao Tome. You've got the ability to register companies, open bank accounts, and participate in the local economy. You also get preferential access to buying Sierra Leone gold. So if you're a gold bug and you're interested about the long-term future of gold, this is something that could be of interest to you. It's not the only place where you can get access to gold. I mean, obviously you've got Zimbabwe, South Africa, and a lot of other countries to mention. But this is something that is an added benefit that you won't get from Sao Tome. Sierra Leone has the kind of reputation of kind of the blood diamond industry, which knowing now that the diamonds are losing their value in the market because you can have lab grown, they're looking at other options in terms of investing. The same is actually happening with Botswana, which is a new program that will be coming out probably Q1, Q2, 2026. Again, another country that has to diversify away from a traditional economy. Now, if you go back to the beginning, the very first Citizenship by Investment program, St. Kitts and Nevis, their donation option they had, which was the non-refundable investment option, you could have done real estate or donation. It was called the SIDF, which meant the Sugar Industry Diversification Fund, because sugarcane was no longer attractive to get from St. Kitts. And so they had to replace that industry. And this is something you'll notice these countries come up with these programs because they need the money. The pricing for Sierra Leone starts at $140,000, so a lot more than you are paying for Sao Tome. Sao Tome was the first country that broke the barrier of being less than 100,000. And a lot of people applauded it. But the reality is I was in this industry when Dominica was $75,000. So it wasn't the first country to do it, but is it the first country in more than a decade? Sierra Leone starts from 140,000. And for that, you've got additional costs if you want to add normal dependents, which is considered spouses, children under 18, parents, grandparents. That's $10,000 each. Special dependents, which is adult children, siblings under 30, spouses of siblings, last remaining relatives is $20,000. And then you can also add, rather unusually, business partners, which is $30,000. So that's something where if you have a pure business case for you and your business partner, say, we travel to Africa a lot, this is very frustrating, we want to get something with ECOWAS because it's just going to make our life easier in terms of applying for visas or getting banking and residency benefits, then this is something that you can look to do. And then you can really bring down the cost. But let's look at a big family size and let's run the numbers. Let's say you've got a family of 7, main applicant, spouse, 2 minor children, 1 adult child, 1 last remaining relative, and you're going to have your business partner. Then you add the due diligence fees of $10,000. You're looking at $250,000. That makes the cost $36,000 per person, which is extremely low. Like you wouldn't have got to that price until probably Caribbean, probably a couple of years ago. That would have been something that could have been possible in some scenarios, but not even at 36,000. You're probably about 50 or 60,000. So that's incredibly affordable. One other variable that is missing from this is spouses of your siblings. So let's say here we had your siblings and then you added their spouse, for example, then you bring the cost down even further. Not by much, but generally speaking, you're going to be around $30,000. This is extremely attractive for a lot of people because I don't think you've had prices per person within a family application as low as this for many years. Obviously, for each dependent you're adding, there is due diligence that needs to be paid and it's processed by a reputable firm out of the UK. But in terms of time frame, the due diligence is going to take about 2 weeks. The letter of approval is 30 to 60 days. Passport naturalization certificate is 60 to 90 days. So again, 2 to 3 months, similar time frames. And if you do the math, it depends really on the family size. So probably if you've got a business partner or you've got a very extended family or you've got siblings, this could be slightly more attractive. But again, don't base it on cost, because I'm going to come to other key differences about these programs that you need to be mindful of. Now, neither of them have a residency requirement. The only country as of today that requires a residency program for CBI is Antigua, but I'm not sure if you're aware about this, but the Caribbean is very close to passing legislation that will require 30 days of residency for each of those 5 Caribbean jurisdictions, which is going to increase your cost. So while people wonder if they should still move ahead with the Caribbean or not, this is something to be mindful of. Sierra Leone is also slightly different in a positive way, and I think there's a negative way that I find you might find later, but it's highly digitally efficient. That means you have a 100% online application process with AI-powered multilingual guidance, in-app messaging. You've got a Zoom notary certification process and due diligence integration all in one space. And that's because the people behind the program played a large role in the Hong Kong residency application process. The main applicant will also get a Sierra Leone company and a bank account in Gambia, all involved in the whole process as well. And then you can also offset your fees using gold as well. So that's very interesting. So it's been called the Go for Gold program as well. So this is something that is extremely interesting because you have the benefit to be able to obtain gold at a discount rate to the market of 2% for 5 years. That is very interesting as well. In terms of visa-free, similar, maybe arguably weaker than Sao Tome. You've got visa-free to Malaysia, Singapore, Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya. The embassies and consulates, there are fewer, and in some strange countries as well. US is unusual. It does have in the UAE, Germany, Sweden, Spain is unusual. You do have China. Restricted nationalities, same as before, North Korea, but does accept Iranians, Russians, and every other nationality in the world. The one thing that I wanted to come to is that what makes the program different is that there isn't citizenship by investment legislation. Now, for some of you, that will be concerning, but one thing I've realized that what has changed a lot is people now but a lot of people are not so keen on pure citizenship by investment. They want to find something a bit more niche. So citizenship by merit, citizenship by exception. Or in this case, this is through naturalization. So there are special powers that have been granted for the persons in power in Sierra Leone to be able to naturalize you. Now, for us, we felt that this is something we needed a bit more information on, and we have requested that this has been backed up by something within the next quarter, something a little bit more substantial to be able to show, okay, how do we know that the people who are granting this actually have the power to grant this citizenship? We don't want to have problems in the future. And they have told us that they will implement and grandfather backwards for anyone who applies now, that as per the new legislation, anyone who has applied for the Sierra Leone program will be able to have the full support of a legislative act that supports any citizen that has been naturalized through this process. The world is changing very fast, and all those people who are like, oh, why do you want to get a passport from this type of country? We are way, way, way past this. The world is changing. People are looking for options, and you can obtain nationality from other ways as well, through marriage, through birth, through descent. Like myself, I obtained nationality through descent, through investment, through naturalization, by exception. The world is there. It's yours. Go get it. We'd be more than happy to help you on the way. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.